Gabe to work.
Oh, we're in a good mood this morning. So good morning, everyone. Let me just start with the mayor of Los Angeles and the governor of California. Actually messed around and found out. They messed around with the lives of Americans when they made their sanctuary cities safe for illegals. And they messed around when they also allowed violent protesters to attack law enforcement agents. Now they're finding out the hard way what it looks like to actually restore law and order. President Trump will not let the extreme and violent protesters tear our country apart. Burning cars, attacking police officers while wearing masks and waving other countries' flags. This will not be tolerated. To the Democrats calling these peaceful protests, shame on you. Do these look like peaceful protests to you? Looks like a place where you'd send your child, maybe Sunday school? Is there anyone in this room that can tell me this is what a peaceful protest looks like? Come on. We need to start correcting the truth with the other half of the truth and making the Democrats own this is a peaceful protest. Please. The Democrats are the ones responsible for this violence and lawlessness. Democrats have demonized law enforcement agents and ICE agents for years. They have enabled this unacceptable behavior. Remember, the Democrats are the ones that demanded that we defund the police. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is what you get when you defund the police. They are the ones who want to abolish ICE. Well, guess what? ICE is the one that protects us, for in the Democrats' eyes, these peaceful protests. ICE agents protect law-abiding American citizens. Gangs are a threat to our communities. ICE agents are on the front lines detaining and deporting violent, illegal aliens, many of whom, may I remind you, are sex offenders, murderers, human traffickers, and gang members. But are we really surprised that these are who the Democrats defend? Of course not. Democrats continue to defend an alleged human smuggler, calling him just a man from Maryland. Just like the left wants you to believe that this is a typical weekend in Los Angeles. Nothing to see here, right? Kind of makes you think for a moment. Isn't it ironic, think about this, that those protesting the deportations of violent, illegal aliens are actually using violence too? Kind of interesting, isn't it? It's almost like they support it. They burn and spit on the American flag while waving flags of other countries. Well, if they hate America so much, they are free to leave. But enough is enough. The riots in Los Angeles this weekend underscore the need for the Senate to pass the one big beautiful bill. ICE needs our help. They need more resources to deport and detain violent, illegal aliens. And now I want to turn it over to a gentleman from Colorado who knows this too well, Mr. Gabe Evans. Thank you. I'll move the box.
Well, thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you, Speaker, for grabbing the box there. Gabe Evans, Colorado's 8th Congressional District, and I'm here today because of my resolution that passed the House yesterday with broad bipartisan support condemning the anti-Semitic firebombing terrorist attack that occurred in Boulder, Colorado, which is about 20 miles away from my house where I live. I'm here today because 15 people and a dog were burned by an individual with known jihadi-leaning affiliations who is illegally present in the United States and who was denied a firearm purchase when he tried to buy a gun in November of last year. And so, of course, the very first thing in this situation is our thoughts and our condolences, of course, go out to the victims and to the Jewish community that are suffering from this rising anti-Semitism. But more than that, we have to ask ourselves, why? Why is this happening? Thoughts and condolences aren't enough. And for me, that's personally very meaningful because of my background. I spent 12 years in the U.S. Army. I deployed overseas to a combat zone as part of the global war on terror when my oldest son was 5 months old. I didn't get back until he was 18 months old. I missed every first steps, first words, first Christmas, first birthday. Then I served another 10 years in law enforcement with the city of Arvada, which is a major suburb just to the west of Denver, immediately south of Boulder, Colorado. I've responded as both a National Guardsman and as a police officer to previous tragedies in Boulder, Colorado. And so for me to now wake up on June 1st and see this tragic event that's happened, of course, thoughts and condolences, but we have to do more. We have to ask the question, why does this continue to happen? We've already gone over the facts of the case here. An individual illegally present in the United States overstayed 2 separate visas with known public statements prior to his admission into the United States, sympathizing with an organization with jihadist-leaning tendencies. At a time of heightened anti-Semitism, goes and he tries to buy a gun last November, is denied, and that doesn't pop up on anyone's radar. There's no ability to intervene or interdict or at least figure out what's going on here, put this to a little bit more scrutiny. As a cop and a soldier for 22 years, I know that we should be doing that. That was literally the point of the 9/11 Commission after the September 11th terrorist attacks, which says that to be able to identify and intervene before terrorism occurs in the United States, federal, state, and local law enforcement need to be able to share information. We need to have all of the pieces of the puzzle together, and when some of those reside with local law enforcement, state officials, and federal authorities, if they cannot share that information, then we're trying to put together a puzzle without all of the pieces, and that makes it difficult to be able to identify and intervene before these attacks happen. And unfortunately, in my Colorado, which is a sanctuary state that prohibits at times state and local law enforcement from being able to work with federal authorities, I can't help but wonder if this attack might have been prevented had the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, which is who does the background checks for firearm purchases in Colorado, had they been able to flag that for one of the multiple different entities that have been set up to share that information and prevent something like this from happening. So that is the point of the resolution that I brought last night, which, I would remind everyone, passed with broad bipartisan support. It's been said that this is politicizing a tragedy. Blatantly false. This is a tragedy that occurred because of failed politics. And so thoughts and condolences are important, but they are not enough. And so the same way I did for 22 years in the military and law enforcement, seeking solutions, elevating the conversations that make our communities safe, that is the point of the resolution last night. And to be personally attacked by the minority leader of the other party for elevating that conversation when 75 of his own members stood with me, that is the politicization of a tragedy. And so from the bottom of my heart to the Jewish community, we stand with you. From the bottom of my heart to Americans and to Coloradans who right now are suffering from the second most dangerous state in the country, we are focused on solutions to prevent things like this from happening again. And to my Democrat colleagues, including Representative Neguse, who stood with me and voted for this resolution last night, thank you. Thank you for helping to elevate this conversation that is focused on solutions to make sure that we keep our communities safe and that we, in no uncertain terms, condemn anti-Semitic attacks, and that we thank the law enforcement officials who are working so tirelessly to keep us safe from all of the bad folks that are out there and that do have malicious intent to cause harm to Americans, to Coloradans, and unfortunately to the Jewish community. Thank you so much. Yield back.
Thank you, Gabe. There's a theme this morning. Rocks thrown at law enforcement. Cars and American flags set on fire. Fireworks thrown into the streets. Foreign flags waving proudly above our own. We are witnessing mayhem, chaos, and disorder in the streets of Los Angeles, all because the Trump administration is enforcing federal immigration law and protecting Californians where the previous administration and their local leaders have repeatedly failed. The violence against ICE officers can also clearly be attributed to the delusional, inflammatory rhetoric spawned by the left, including the words of my own incompetent and partisan governor, Timmy Walz, who recently called immigration authorities, quote, the modern-day Gestapo. With taxpayer-funded benefits for illegal aliens and inflammatory rhetoric for law enforcement, Walz has turned my home state of Minnesota into a sanctuary state. And this week, he's going to answer to Congress for his failures. As Walz testifies before the House Oversight Committee on Thursday, House Republicans are working to mitigate the disastrous consequences of mass illegal immigration and the policies like Tim Walz who encourage it. Need to support our ICE agents and law enforcement officers on the ground with the tools they need to carry out their vital mission. That is why we must get the one big beautiful bill across the finish line. Our bill includes funding for 10,000 more ICE officers and HSI criminal investigators to protect our communities and at least 1 million deportations of illegal aliens annually. The time is now to restore law and order, enforce our nation's immigration laws, and hold leaders who are not leading, that refuse to lead, I should say, to do so and be accountable. With that, I turn it over to our leader.
Thank you, Whip. And anybody who watched these just inflammatory scenes roll out in Los Angeles over the weekend see one more example why we need to pass the one big beautiful bill and why we need to get it to President Trump's desk as soon as possible. One of the many great provisions in this bill that we came together to pass through the House are provisions that allow our ICE agents and our Border Patrol agents to get more resources, to get more support, hiring more Border Patrol agents and more ICE agents. Frankly, it's one of the reasons that every single Democrat voted no on the bill, because they want open borders. They want the chaos and the mayhem that comes with sanctuary cities and sanctuary states that we've been standing up against. They had the opportunity to join us, and they deliberately chose to vote no because they want higher taxes, they want open borders, they want to close off our energy resources, all the things that were in that bill. And so we're going to continue moving forward. The Senate is doing their work now, and I'm confident the Senate is going to move through quickly to get that bill through the Senate, ultimately back to the House for any minor changes, and then to the President's desk so that we can hire those additional Border Patrol agents, hire those additional ICE agents to keep Americans safe. And by the way, if you're a citizen of the state of California, while your governor is failing you miserably, at least we have a president, Donald Trump, who is willing to say that he will step up and try to protect those same people, law-abiding people who are sick and tired of the lawlessness. They are disgusted by a foreign flag being waved in an American city and their governor defending the people that are actually burning down the city, trying to call it a peaceful protest. Don't insult the intelligence of the American people. They see what's happening. They know why it's happening. The far left Democrat Party wants open borders. There was an election run on this. The American people said enough is enough. We want secure borders, and that's why they sent Donald Trump and a Republican House and Senate to Washington. And we're going to keep fighting for those families who are sick and tired of what they're seeing in cities like Los Angeles and other lawless cities in America. So we're going to deliver on our promise. One more really positive thing that came out just a few days ago, the White House's Office of Management and Budget did their assessment on the House's version of the One Big Beautiful Bill and confirmed what we knew, that with the economic growth you'll get, with the job creation, the increased wages for families, we will end up seeing about $1.5 trillion reduction in the national deficit over the next 10 years. $1.5 trillion reduction because of the growth we'll get from this bill, because workers will have more money in their pockets, when the government doesn't have a $4.5 trillion tax increase that every Democrat voted to impose upon them. Waiters and waitresses at all of your local restaurants will have more money in their pockets because of no taxes on tips. Your blue-collar workers who go to work and sometimes have the opportunity to work overtime and maybe wonder if they should do it because of all the taxes that they'll end up paying on that overtime to be away from their family, will no longer have to worry about paying taxes on overtime. And that's going to spur investment. It's going to spur more job creation, and it's going to spur more money in the pockets of those blue-collar workers. So that's going to be another really big, important aspect. So that OMB report coming out really underscores one more reason why this bill is so important to the people of the United States. And then, of course, this week we're taking up the rescissions package. Thursday we will vote on that. We've been answering questions from our members, but our members are ready to go lock in some of those DOGE cuts. DOGE identified waste, fraud, and abuse in so many areas of the federal government. This is a start. It's a good start. It's an important first step, and we're going to take it on Thursday. With that, our leader, who is getting us through all of these challenges, making it look easy, Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
Thank you, Leader Scalise, and this great team. Thanks to Gabe Evans for his leadership and helping out this week and taking care of business in Colorado. It's really an interesting time in America and in American politics. Republicans are governing well, and we are delivering on our promises, and we are bringing solutions, and we're working around the clock every day to make sure that that is delivered for the people as we promised them last year on the campaign trail. Meanwhile, Democrats are engaging in the applause of destruction of cities and all sorts of chaos. The contrast is so clear, and everybody can see it. And we had all the Republicans gathered together for our weekly meeting here just in the last hour, and we showed them poll after poll after poll that confirms what we all know intuitively. The American people see who is doing the job, and they are losing their tolerance for the nonsense by the Democratic Party. And you can't make this stuff up. We talked a lot this morning about what's happening in Los Angeles because it is such a great exhibit to show what is happening. A picture's worth 10,000 words, of course. You know, while the rioters have been burning police cars and looting storefronts and physically assaulting law enforcement officers, it's important to remember how we got to this point, to this level of chaos, because this didn't happen overnight. 4 quick points to make us all remember. You know, we're in a busy news cycle, and people sometimes forget the facts, but the Biden administration welcomed maybe as many as 20 million illegal aliens across that border and into our country in a 4-year period. Sanctuary states like California rolled out the welcome mat. They embraced it. They offered aliens protection from federal law enforcement. Think of it. They're on the wrong side of the law. And they provided them with health care and housing and taxpayer-funded benefits. It's truly almost unbelievable, incredible what these Democrat leaders of these cities and states have done. President Trump delivered on an ironclad mandate from the American people, and just as we said throughout the entire Biden administration disaster, the law always allowed the president to stop it, and President Trump did it with bold visionary leadership. He stopped the invasion of our country, and he engaged in the largest mass deportation effort in U.S. history. We're in the midst of that right now. Rioters, acting on the words of politicians like AOC and Hakeem Jeffries, are trying to stop this effort by burning storefronts and endangering the lives of patriotic law enforcement officers. The contrast could not be any more clear. Time and time again, innocent, hardworking Americans have been harmed by the failed leadership of Democrat governors like Gavin Newsom. President Trump was absolutely right to send in the National Guard and to clean up for the governor's failures. You know, Gavin Newsom's been in this effort for the last several months to try to reinvent himself, to rebrand himself, okay? It's pretty difficult to do when your state is a safe haven to violent, criminal, illegal aliens, and you're the one at the helm. You can't hide this stuff. The President of the United States has a responsibility to maintain law and order, particularly when the lives and livelihoods of federal law enforcement officers are threatened. What we're doing there with the federal forces is we are protecting federal buildings and property and personnel, and the President is showing strong leadership in doing so. Because, you know, it's those men and women, the federal law enforcement officers, who deserve our support right now. And the One Big Beautiful Bill, by the way, as Leader Scalise noted, delivers much-needed reinforcements. In this bill, we have funding to hire a minimum of 10,000 new ICE agents. We're going to provide a $10,000 bonus to Border Patrol and ICE agents on the front lines. We're going to include $45 billion to expand ICE detention capacity and $14.4 billion for air and ground transport to carry out at least 1 million deportations every single year. We'll have to do that for quite some time because they let so many people in. We're starting with the dangerous illegal aliens, and that is exactly who the rioters and the politicians in California are trying to protect, and it's incredible. While Republicans are supporting the men and women of ICE through the One Big Beautiful Bill, Democrats are fighting for those illegal aliens and against law enforcement agents. They're defending the violent anti-ICE protesters in L.A. They visited a violent MS-13 gang member and human trafficker in El Salvador. They charged an ICE facility and clashed with ICE officers. That was members of the House of Representatives doing that. They're advocating for people to dox ICE agents and making them targets for threats from radicals. And they're calling for the elimination of ICE. Don't forget what ICE stands for. People get caught up in the acronyms or lost in the acronyms. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, okay? It is to enforce federal law. It is to enforce a secure border. And the Democrats want to defund that. Just let that settle on you a bit. They're even trying to hide it. And they're not even trying to hide it, okay? They're openly advocating for illegals instead of American citizens. I don't know. We could talk about this all morning, and we have. Let me move on. With regard to the business in the House this week, the House will vote to approve the White House's request to claw back $9.4 billion in wasteful spending. $8.3 billion of that is wasteful foreign aid with all the atrocities that DOJ uncovered in USAID, and $1.1 billion for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. That's PBS, NPR. These are common sense cuts, and I think every member of this body should support it. It's a critical step in restoring fiscal sanity and beginning to turn the tides of removing fraud, waste, and abuse from our government. Have you checked the public opinion polls? That's what the American people want, and they demand and deserve, and we're going to do it. I read some of the greatest hits last week out of this, but I just want to list a few more examples, okay? Last week he gave you some of the real high-level, high-number amounts, but these are lower dollars, but they matter. Listen to this. $33,000 we're going to cut. That was being used for, quote, being LGBT in the Caribbean. No kidding. American taxpayers are funding that. $8,000 for promoting vegan food in Zambia. $67,000 for feeding insect powder to kids in Madagascar. You'll notice these aren't particularly expensive examples of wasteful spending, but compared to these other massive categories of government bloat. But I list those because it's an illustration here. Every dollar matters. We are serious about this. The Republican Party is doing everything we can to be careful stewards of the precious treasure of the people. And the Democrats want to waste it and send it to their NGO pet projects and just all this crazy stuff. We're not going to fund our transgender operas in Peru anymore. Once we found that out, we had a responsibility to go stop it, and we will. This rescission package is a critical step, and it's one of many. There'll be several of these that will come from the White House. We'll work together with the administration to cut out all the fraud, waste, and abuse. We're fighting a multi-front war against the deficit. Don't get lost in this, okay? This is a multi-step process. I've tried to explain on all the interviews I've done over the last couple of weeks. The One Big Beautiful Bill is going to reduce spending by over $1.6 trillion, as has been noted this morning. The rescissions package will rescind $9.4 billion in wasteful spending, the first of many of those. The annual appropriations process will allow Republicans to further codify DOJ cuts and spend less money and be careful stewards of each dime. And the revenues found from the president's tariff agenda will also reduce the deficit by $2.8 trillion over 10 years. This is real money, and we're going to turn that aircraft carrier. You don't turn it on a dime, you've all heard me say. You can't make deficits and debt disappear overnight, but we're at it. And we're going to continue this step-by-step process to get our fiscal house in order and do right by the taxpayers. We're chipping away at it every day, and the rescissions vote on Thursday is an important signal. House Republicans are serious about getting our fiscal house in order, and we'll do that. All right, let me take a few questions. Front row.
Speaker Johnson, the president said, possibly in jest, that if he were Tom Homan, he would arrest Gavin Newsom. Do you believe that Newsom should face consequences in a legal way?
That's not my lane. I'm not going to give you legal analysis on whether Gavin Newsom should be arrested, but he ought to be tarred and feathered, I'll say that. I mean, look, he's standing in the way of the administration and the carrying out of federal law, right? He is applauding the bad guys and standing in the way of the good guys. He is trying to, he's a participant, an accomplice in our federal law enforcement agents being not just disrespected, but assaulted. this is a serious problem, and the governor is now filing a lawsuit against the president. What a joke. Do your job, man. That's what I tell Gavin Newsom. Do your job. Stop working on your rebranding and be a governor. Stand up for the rule of law. He's not doing that. So I don't know what the ultimate measure will be there, but I know that in the interim time, the President of the United States is showing real leadership, and we're not going to allow L.A. to burn. We've seen this movie before, right? This thing gets out of hand real quickly, especially in a big city like that. And if local and state officials are unwilling or unable to do their job, the President of the United States will do his, and we support that fully. Yes, ma'am, in the middle.
What is the administration's response to Mexican President Sheinbaum's refusal to condemn the riots in LA? And does this affect President Trump's relationship with Sheinbaum?
I don't know. You have to ask the White House that. I mean, I gotta handle our affairs over here. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is your reaction to Congresswoman Maxine Waters repeatedly saying that there has been no violence in the LA riots? And do you believe that Democrats are making a mistake by not talking about what's really going on here?
Clearly, the Democrats are making a mistake by taking the wrong side here, and I'm just going to, in my southern gentlemanly way, say bless her heart to Maxine Waters. I don't even know how to comment on Maxine Waters anymore. It's madness. I'm going to be charitable and leave it right there. Yes, sir. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So new reporting suggests that no tax on tips and no tax on overtime could be scaled back from the One Big Beautiful Bill if they aren't viewed as pro-growth. Have you talked to some senators that are skeptical of that, like Senator Johnson? And you've said before that there isn't a plan B, but if that does come back to the House without these provisions, is it time to go back to the drawing board?
Well, look, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime are big promises the president made to the people, and we all echoed that on the campaign trail. I've talked to my good friend, Senator Ron Johnson, multiple times, most recently, I think it was last night or night before last, it was on Sunday, because he was on some shows and I was on some shows and we were comparing notes. And I told him, look, we all agree with our Senate colleagues who believe we need to cut more and more government waste, fraud, and abuse, obviously. But I told him, reminded him of the reality of the delicate balance we have in the House and the fact that we have a very broad caucus and we have, got 170 additional personalities to deal with than they do in the Senate, and it takes a while to meet this equilibrium point. So, look, I think the promise on no tax on tips and no tax on overtime is very important to the president. It's very important to hardworking Americans. And what we're so proud of our reconciliation bill is that it is truly geared and written for middle and lower class earning Americans, the hardworking Americans who are trying to feed their families and make ends meet. They are the ones that are going to benefit from this bill. The Republican Party is the party of the working class, and we are demonstrating that with our legislation. And no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, for some people, they may not think that's a big thing, but for hardworking folks, a lot of them, millions and millions of Americans, that is a big thing to them, and I think it's an important promise for us to keep.
Last question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, switching gears a bit, the FACE Act. It's right now being marked up in the Judiciary Committee. Plan to bring it to the floor, and the importance for the Republican Party and leadership of bringing this to the floor.
Yeah, look, it's a big commitment of ours. Applaud Chairman Jim Jordan and the Judiciary. He always does a great job handling that. It's a big priority. We have to protect free speech. We've got to protect what are actual peaceful protests, and we got to stand for our core principles. I think all that's wrapped up in that legislation, and I expect it'll go well, and I expect we'll pass it through the House when it comes through committee. So, one last question. Yeah.
Speaker Johnson, just running back to the LA protests.
Yes.
Is there a red line for congressional Republicans regarding President Trump's use of executive authority to, say, deploy federal law enforcement or the 700 Marines? Is there a situation, say, if he invoked the Insurrection Act or directed federal law enforcement to arrest Governor Newsom, that would make Congress step in as a check?
Look, I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals, but I've said very clearly, I was sitting next to the President at the White House yesterday when some of these questions were asked. He is fully within his authority right now to do what he is doing, and we have to maintain order. It's the number one job. Think of it, y'all. The number one job of government is to protect the citizenry from foreign threats and domestic threats. And federal law enforcement is doing their job. Those are the heroes, and we've got to protect them, and federal employees as well, and federal buildings and property. We're not going to let violent criminals destroy the property of U.S. taxpayers. President Trump has put his hand on the table and said, not on my watch, and we applaud that. So we're standing with him. Thank you all.
Good job.